Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
You know that we just love authors, and I've had such superb authors for so many years, and always a few stick with me more than others. And this is one time that it has happened. And the name of the book is My Eyes Looking Back at Me. The author is MENUCHA MEINSTEIN. I'm really doing well.
With the mother.
I'm really doing well on this, but that's okay because I'm so enthralled with the book. It doesn't even matter to me what the names are. I'm being bad because when you're an author, you want your name correct. But it was an extraordinary book, MENUCHA, and I'm so glad that you're here with me. And it's, of course, the book, the title, My Eyes Looking Back at Me, does not say anything about the Holocaust at that moment, but once you see the cover and you read the introduction, you know that's what it's about. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're an extraordinary woman, and you have dedicated a lot of years to writing this book. Why did you decide to do this?
I was a volunteer through the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, and I was assigned to the Jewish Community Services to a program called Two's Company, where they pair a volunteer with a Holocaust survivor. And I was paired with Leia Roth because I said I wanted to work with someone who wanted to write their story.
But not necessarily the Holocaust.
No, Two's Company is for Holocaust survivors.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I was paired with Leia. She lived 20 minutes away from me, a widow, 88 years old at the time. She's now 91, and we just hit it off the first day.
And why? Well, I can see anyone would hit it off with you. It's just your nature is just so open and so lovely. But go back, were your family members involved in the Holocaust? Is that why you have such a great interest?
No, not at all. I just met Leia because I wanted to help someone write their story. And the first time I met Leia, I was bitten because her story is so phenomenal. I knew that it had to be told to a greater audience than just her family. She had begun writing, and she had all the genealogical and historical facts down, but there was nothing about Leia in what she was writing. It could have been anyone's story.
So that's what you found fascinating, that you could get into her head, pardon the expression, in her heart. And had she told this to anyone else before you?
She had done a Spielberg testimony, but it was very cursory. It was, I was born here, and I was in this camp, and then I went to Israel, and it was basic because she skirted over all the issues. She wasn't ready to really speak about it and tell the truth. And I told her, for this to be relevant, you have to tell the whole truth. It has to be real, no matter how badly it hurt. And it did hurt because we both had nightmares from this story.
And had you ever written a book like this before?
No, this is my first book.
Had you ever even thought about writing a book, even if it weren't on the Holocaust?
Yes, I had. I developed a method of journaling called assisted journaling that I coined soul writing, because through soul writing, it's like peeling away the layers of an onion until you get to that sweet spot in the center that's really your godly soul, that's your truth. And that's what I used to write Leia's story.
Okay, so when you were younger, though, and why don't you tell everybody what your life's work was?
Well, in Seattle, I was in the financial services industry. I had a practice of 500 clients. Before that, I was in medical research, and I had a degree from Antioch University that I chose because you wrote a lot, and I wanted to write, not take meaningless tests, but write. So that's my master's degree in psychology from Antioch University.
And this could have been a doctoral dissertation.
Well, I suppose. Thank you.
I mean, it
Thank
was.
you.
Yes, going through it. And it's true, even though I did not know her, it was very, very hard to get through. And I mean, it was all in perfect English, but it was very,
because
very,
it's intense.
Yeah, very
it's
intense.
A very intense story, and there's a lot of twists and turns that were unexpected to me also. Never having written a book, I had a writing group, and the two women in my writing group were Marjorie Waterman and Rosalind Kaplis, and we would meet once a week at my kitchen table, and we would review one another's writing and critique it. I didn't know how the book would end. I didn't know where it was going, but as my life with Leia progressed and we lived together, she lived with us and my husband, and we had a lot of experiences together. Things happened that developed the story into something really meaningful for her life. She grew and I grew.
And you said that you had just come back from the Holocaust Museum in Washington.
Yes.
Are they going to carry your book?
They have my book.
Yay!
Yes, we did a book signing
Wonderful.
in Washington, D.C. last Thursday, the 21st. And yes, we had a great...
Did she meet you there?
Yes, she came. Absolutely. She was there, and she got there before I did, and she'd already signed a dozen books by the time I arrived, and I was 40 minutes early. So she was
great.
very enthusiastic.
How is her health? I mean, being in a Holocaust, you know, when we read what happened to these poor souls, how is it today?
She's very strong woman, and afraid of nothing. But the one thing that she is afraid of, and we say this in the book, is, I hope not to be sick. And you know, being 91, she's becoming a bit frail. And we've been through valve replacement and some other medical issues. And she's not so strong anymore. She needs a lot of extra rest. But she's where she should be now, with her daughter, with her family, so she can attend all the family simchas and all the wonderful things that happen in families. She has 8 great-grandchildren now, and she should be there to enjoy those things.
Now, I don't know if I missed this or not in the book, but has she made a lot of friends from the Holocaust here when she was in Miami? Do they stick together?
They stick together, but most of them that were friends are deceased. Mm. And that's what's so sad. We'll go to Two's Company to a luncheon, and there's maybe a third of the people that used to be there 4 years ago. So, you know, the numbers are dwindling, and that's why it's so important at the end to tell their stories.
Yes, I see that. That is very true. Now, fortunately for me, I never had anyone, no family member in the Holocaust. So it's been very foreign, other than reading and knowing people and writing about this. But that was kind of strange for me, why I didn't. My grandparents, they were from Hungary, and I didn't have any, at least I didn't know of anyone who was in the Holocaust. And maybe there were aunts, uncles, cousins, second, third, fourth cousins that were. I just didn't know it. But what's happened for me is recently I've had people coming out of the woodwork who have written books, not of the magnitude of yours, but who want to talk about the Holocaust in their books.
To talk about their stories, yes, because as time grows short, they suddenly realize someone should know what they've been through. And in fact, I've been contacted by an attorney who has a client who's a 96-year-old German woman who has a non-Jewish woman who was a rescuer in the Holocaust, and now she wants to tell her story. So I hope that's my next book.
Oh, now what a nice thing that you just told us about on the radio. Yes, I was shaking my head. Yes, that's something you should do. Yes, I'm very excited about that because I attended something. I attended the French. It's a French dedication to the servicemen who served in France during World War II, and my husband was a B-17 pilot. And so they give them a Medal of Honor, and the consulates are there. Well, at first they didn't think he was appropriate because they said, you never had your feet touch the soil in France. He said, yes, but you wouldn't be there if I hadn't been up in the B-17s saving you, right? So they decided to do it.
I may have been there. One of my best friends, Mildred Kagan, received that honor also from the French.
But wait a minute. But were you there when the German consulate was there? This is what happened. On the program, remember. Well, you would. On the program, they had who was going to be there. Of course, it was the French consulate. Then they had the German consulate. We're all looking, are they kidding? And so he spoke, and he was a young man. And he spoke about the horror, and he feels so badly that happened, and it will never happen again. And we all had goosebumps because it was beautiful. It was the best. It was better than the French consulate. It was very monumental to hear him. So it was unusual, but anyway. So I was just thinking about that because a lot of German people and people from other places did help, and no one knows that. I mean, but they did a good job.
Well, we became friends with Jurgen Borscht, the past German consulate here. And because he was at the University of Miami when we were there presenting our book and gave a speech where he asked forgiveness for what Hitler and his henchmen did to the Jewish people. We were sitting there, both in tears, crying.
Of course.
And when we met him afterwards, they greeted one another with tears in their eyes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's something that we could just never even imagine or let happen. But I want to get back to the book because I do want people to buy your book. I just have to say that it is mind-boggling because if you've probably never known someone as intimately, even if you've ever known anyone that was in the Holocaust, but never as intimately as MENUCHA writes about. And the name of the book again is My Eyes Looking Back at Me, Insight into a Survivor's Soul. Tell us a little bit about Sarah Horowitz, who you had as the introduction by.
I met Sarah Horowitz at York University in Canada, and I went specifically to ask her to write the introduction, which she finally agreed to do. And it's wonderful how she talks about the genesis of speaking about the Holocaust. In the beginning, they didn't want survivors to speak because they figured that it wouldn't be historically accurate. So they only had, people speaking who were scholars about the Holocaust. And then they realized that the survivors are the ones who have the real stories.
I can't believe what you just said.
Yes, it's true. You read it in the
but I'm saying I just can't believe, though, when I read that. Yeah. I can't believe that anybody would be so stupid.
Well, remember, nobody wanted to hear about it.
Oh, I see.
They didn't want to hear about the Holocaust.
They would hear about it, but not from the people because it was too heart-wrenching.
Before I wrote this book, I had read Night by Elie Wiesel, and I had read The Diary of Anne Frank. That was enough for me. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the piles of shoes and the hair and the glasses and the bodies. I didn't know what to do with it. But through Leia's story, I understand one person's soul that went through the Holocaust. But it's not just about the trains and the camps and the ghettos. This is a life story of a woman who's been able to justify the juxtaposition of the Holocaust with her yearning to create a life and to have revenge against Hitler by creating her own family and her own history. She's not a bitter woman. She's a woman of love and strength and resilience. Like, you can't believe it.
And will she talk to anyone as she talked to you? If you had her, if she were on an opportunity to be on the radio. Would she do that out now? She can do that.
Yes, she would.
I had a book that I reviewed recently with a man who was in the Holocaust, and he said that I could write, and he spoke to me on the phone, but he would not do the radio show. He said, I can't. He said, it's too emotional for me. Yeah.
Well, it's very emotional for her, and it's very emotional for me because we love each other so much, and her suffering pains me to my core.
I went to the Anne Frank home in Amsterdam at one point, and I do remember thinking about this. How could that woman, young woman, be so positive living in the worst conditions? I don't know how that happens. Do you?
I think there's something that we're born with, that you have to do everything you can to survive. And that's how Leia survived. She did whatever she had to do to survive. She found the strength within herself. There was no question that no matter what the odds were, she found a way to endure it. For example, when they told 1,200 women to undress, to go take a shower, and they put her in the gas chamber, and nothing happened. She said, I tried the water. There was no water coming from the pipes. And they were there all night long until in the morning, the Gestapo came and said, Schnell, schnell, out, out. So they all ran out into the field, naked as they were. Why? Because they brought a trainload of children in the night, and they had to get rid of them first. So she was in the field listening to these cries of children as the breath was taken from them as they were gassed.
See,
now how could anybody survive that?
I don't know.
She fell and she fainted and she got up and somehow she was taken to another camp. She had mazel. She had luck somehow. She wasn't meant to die. She was meant to stay here and tell her story and create her own family in revenge of what Hitler did to the Jewish people.
It was. And so you did have nightmares, I'm sure. And you have a wonderful husband that he was able to say, okay, sure, I know you love this woman, and sure, you could bring her in here. I was thinking about that. He was pretty nice, wasn't he?
He was.
Well,
he was. And he helped edit a lot because, first when you write, you just put down what you hear. And then you have to go back and say, no, this isn't music. This isn't good prose. And then it would be out of order because stories from Leia would come from nowhere. Everything reminds her of something. For example, we can be driving down Interstate 95 and you see the tower at Barry University. She'd say, see, there's a tower. It reminds me of Auschwitz with the guns up on top. Everything reminds her of something in the Holocaust. And yet she goes on.
She's very lucky to find you, too, because had she not, think about it, this book wouldn't be there and she would still be just keeping it all in. It was that was really the blessing of all blessings for both of you to find.
Yes, it was.
And have other people in your organization, your group, done a book the same way that you have?
No.
Nobody has.
Nobody has.
So they must be very proud of you that you had. Well, of course, you had the ability to do it, but you, because I'm sure a lot of them would have loved to have done it.
I learned from Leia to be persistent. She forced me. She said, MENUCHA, I want to hold this book before I die.
Oh.
And she would go to bed crying because we were only on chapter 4. She said, this book is never going to be finished. We have to work more. We have to go further. And we'd stay up till 12, 1, or 2 o'clock because there was no phone calls to interrupt us, no one to interrupt us. And the next morning we were tired, but we'd start again, and we just kept going. And my goal was, I promised her that I would finish this book by her 90th birthday. And we did. We printed it. Her birthday is March 14th, 1925. And it was published on the day of liberation and the day after her birthday.
So the pressure was on for you.
The pressure was really on.
So
Yes.
Did she have a part in the cover?
We kind of developed it together. I went to Whitehall Printing, and I said, I really can't afford a professional cover. Let's work this out together. And we did.
Very professional. It's just the whole idea, the symbolics, the fact that there she is today, there she was before. And then talk about the name. Who decided on My Eyes Looking Back at Me?
Well, we went to the Holocaust Memorial in Miami Beach. And she and her daughter had been there a couple years earlier. And her daughter was looking at this engraved archival photo of the Germans herding the Jews to the train. And she said, Emma, come here. This is you. And she pointed, it's in the book, a picture of her. She'd never seen it herself. And there was a younger Leia being herded onto the train. So she said, my eyes are looking back at me. And that's where the title came from.
I can understand that.
Is that amazing?
I can understand that. It's interesting, and I don't know where. I must have seen it in movies, but I was always amazed that although people they knew that they would be next. They weren't in the prisons yet, but they knew that the Germans were coming. That the Seders, any of the Friday night Shabbats, they would just keep doing that no matter what. And then in the Holocaust, where they did have the violin, they did have orchestras, and they played. I mean, that's
forced.
I mean, that's.
And then they would kill them.
I mean, that was just amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, she said people were in denial. They couldn't believe the stories they heard, and they thought, it can't happen to us.
Is that
this
why?
Can't be real. They were in denial until they were taken.
And yes, and I don't know where there's so many places that I've read, and I can't put my finger on it, where people, of course, were shot and they were put into graves, but then some people were still alive and they crawled out of the graves. Was that in the book, or is it somewhere else?
That's true. It's in the book that some people survived. They crawled out, and even though they were injured, they made it back to their hometown, which wasn't so far away, and they would try to tell people what happened. And they called these people the crazies. This couldn't be real. This really couldn't happen. So you see, it did happen. And the people who witnessed these graves, the townspeople who would stand around hoping for a coin or a piece of jewelry or some clothing from these victims, said the ground moved. After they would cover them up with the dirt, some people were alive and the ground was moving.
So in our short interview, I am so overwhelmed and so, I don't even have a word for it, emotional. We'll just use the word emotional. How have you survived this? And how long did you say that you've been working on the book?
It took us 4 years. We met December 7th, 2010, and we finished 2014 or 2015 in March. So it was 4 years, and it was like, I just have to finish this. This is so important, this work, because of the lessons that she teaches us to never give in and never give up.
And never allow it to happen.
Well, and then
I mean, thinking
what
about
you
some of our
do
political problems
matters, and what you say matters, and that we must tell our children and our grandchildren what happened so that they can move forward with actions of kindness. We must be kind to others. And in fact, we gave a testimony. We give dramatic narrative readings to a middle school, Pioneer Middle School. And we received cards from every child that heard our testimony. So there were over 100 cards. Leia received her packet and I received mine. And it was about kindness, what we taught them about kindness and how they're going to pay it forward. And it's so beautiful. So children can understand this book. It's vetted for reading and for teaching students from age 11.
Yes, I can see that children could. And of course your pictures. So where did she keep all the pictures? Where did she get all the pictures?
You know, Leia has no pictures of her childhood or of her parents. There are none because they were all taken. Her house, her little house, 2-room house in Brewstery, Czechoslovakia, was burned down. Her sister survived, only her sister, and had a few photos. And in fact, at the Holocaust Memorial, we found another picture of her favorite brother, Benzion, on a Spanish book. Our book is now being translated into Spanish and Hebrew. And they're very interested in us doing a book signing when we have the Spanish book. But to find another picture of Benzion is a gift.
Can you imagine that? Well, let's see. So, I as I say, I am very confused because I have attended many things. I attended something at the Boca Raton Hotel. I told you about that, didn't I? Mm-hmm. And it was my friend Arlene Herson, who you probably know if she was on the board of the D.C. Holocaust Museum. And anyway, she arranges a lot of things. And so she was there and she brought in a woman who, and I'll tell you when we go off, I don't have time for this now, but I have to tell you, this is absolutely the most wonderful book. I hope people will buy this. And can they just go to Amazon.com and say, My Eyes Looking Back at Me?
Yes, it's available on Amazon.
Let's do that.
Yes.
My Eyes Looking Back at Me, MENUCHA.
MENUCHA.
MEINSTEIN. Really? I have a little problem with that. But I'm going to do it fine because you're going to be my friend and I'm going to be able to call you that. Please buy the book, My Eyes Looking Back at Me. Be prepared for something you've never read before and you will never forget it. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.